All right. So Melissa, I'm ready for questions whenever you are.
Hey, hello. Give me 1 second to get all of these kind of organized here. You guys are asking some really great stuff today.
Yes. So good to see
I was
everybody. Happy
concerned
Tuesday.
at I was concerned at the beginning of the class because usually at least one person, it usually has a couple questions right at the beginning of the class and nothing came in for like 5 minutes.
Well, probably
So
because
I was
everyone was
like,
watching. It's pretty fast moving when they're
yeah.
trying to optimize.
Mhm. So I was kind of thinking, oh God, if we have a tech issue with questions, I'm going to scream probably.
I know. After
All
12 weeks,
right.
I think we're at week 11. I think we're at the end of our tech issue rope.
Thank God. Okay, let me get into this here. Okay, Smile's got the first question. Smile says, is there any way to find out how much your competitors are bidding?
Nope. Just bid until you outrank them.
Okay.
Well, you can kind of assume that one of your competitors is at least in that high bid range. So when you see the bid range, you can know that, yeah, there's a broad range there, but at whatever the high bid is, one of your competitors is doing that.
Okay, this next question has some metrics in it, so you might want to have a piece of paper or pen handy there to just take a couple notes so you got a full understanding. Okay, it says, if I had to choose one campaign to concentrate all my ad groups, should I use option one, the campaign that has sold the most in the last 3 months, the sales are 500, the ACoS is 85%, or option number two, the campaign that has sold the most year to date with sales at 3,700 and ACoS at 67%, but it has no sales in the last 3 months because she turned it off.
I think it's, kind of half a dozen of one or the other. I would definitely go, probably if it were me, I would go year to date with the 67. But I think it's not going to super matter whichever way you go.
Okay. When you say a keyword is high volume, you conclude this from the amount of impressions or from Helium-10 data?
Well, you have to start with Helium-10 data. So when you have a high volume keyword, these are all keyword reports here. You got to start with Helium-10 data. It's just good data. It's Amazon data. It's going to work for you. Let's go to Clear Epoxy. Volume, broad match volume out of Helium-10 shows these are high volume, and let's confirm it against our own data. It's super magical, right? So, this is a keyword tool, but just know that every one of your competitors also has these same keywords in their arsenal because they pulled them out of Helium-10. So, which doesn't mean you don't start here, though. I went back to Helium-10 to get all these keywords for today. So you got to use your own data, which is your competitive advantage, up against what's in the keyword tools. Keyword tools are not the almighty. They're just data. You want to use your data, partner with a good keyword tool, right? Just to keep it's like a chess game, keep it straight. So here we have epoxy resin. It says high volume. It's absolutely true. You do have a high volume here. Epoxy is the highest volume. And let's just see how well these held up in the test. So this is what Helium-10, if you just do a broad, clear epoxy, like what's going on? Where's the most searches at? Broad search volume, it's saying resin, epoxy, and epoxy resin. So now I'll go to my search term report, see what it says. Resin, epoxy. Does that match up perfectly? Resin, epoxy, epoxy, resin. Yep, really Amazon data right there for you. So you can see it matches up. So the keyword tool shows you broad match and they're high. Now at the end of the day though, just because the keyword tool gives it to you as high volume doesn't mean it's interesting. You don't sell liquid glass and JB Weld sells like a 2-ounce solution or 1-ounce solution. You don't have any kind of mold going on here, like a resin mold, at least what I would picture one to be like. You have no glass repair kit, right? So it's showing you a lot of things within this category that are high volume. It does not mean that any of them apply to you. So you need to use it just like Daryl did an amazing job. You need to filter these down and figure out the ones that really apply to your product. And then most of the time, yeah, they're going to match up. But then at the end, all you really care about here is that these, what does your search term report say? Yes, impressions. I sorted this data by impressions as I first started analyzing it. Absolutely. So now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say, okay, but what's going on in my search term report? Absolutely. It just matches up pretty well. But what this is showing me is even though epoxy resin is a high volume keyword, at broad and phrase, just like the reports told me it would be, the gold for me is epoxy resin crystal clear. That's like my highest converting short tail modified search right there. This guy is the true gold, this epoxy resin crystal clear. And that's not going to give it to you. It's there right here, right? It's in the keyword report. It's 13,000 searches. So it looks very uninteresting compared to these three big guys at the top. But in reality, it drove a lot of sales and a lot more impressions than expected. So I think it's all about combining like what the keyword research says, making sure it's very filtered to match your specific features and benefits. And then from there, being sure you pay attention to your search term report. And I have two quick notes, Melissa, that I'm going to bring up now. So this is super exciting too. So this account is so much fun to optimize because it's just rocking and rolling. But I have so much opportunity here. So on Thursday, I'm going to use this campaign as a demo for backend search terms because these backend search terms need optimization. So I am going to use this awesome data. I mean, Data-A-Rama, right? Like this is like a perfect case study for backend search terms. I could just print. I mean, again, you could set up your backend search terms and you could have overlooked things like bar top, table top, two-part, word order, word sequence, word frequency, epoxy resin crystal clear will be my first 4 words in the back end. So I'm going to do a backend search term module. We've already started on the guide for it, but I'm going to do, we have the mega guides like in the works. We're always like doing them. And then they all require me to sit for like 4 hours and do the final copy. And then I'm doing this stuff. But here we have this. We're going to do the back end search terms off of this particular example on Thursday, at the beginning of class. So be sure you're there if you want to know how to do back end. And Daryl, I will do that for you and send you the files because you need to optimize the back end search terms. I was looking at them. Okay, so that is going to be the next update is Thursday's class talking about that.
Okay, let me see here. Get to the next one. All right. When you analyze the STR, does the original keyword and match type influence what you do with the keywords you mine from the search terms?
One more time, Melissa. I need to take notes. Sorry.
Okay. Yep. When analyzing the STR, does the original keyword and match type influence what you do with the keywords you mine from search terms?
No, I'm going to assume those are exact match.
Okay.
All my search terms I assume are exact match. Now I have to say though, if I mine something like epoxy resin crystal clear, this came out as a single because it was so good. But a clear epoxy resin, if I put those in as exact match and I don't get traction, but I show serious impressions here in this report, I do add them as a secondary measure as broad match to see if they'll do better. But all these coming out of here, I assume are exact match out the gate.
All right. Successes, they couldn't see the cells clearly. I could see them clearly from my end, so I'm not sure if it's just a screen resolution from their end. But the question is, do you have broad keywords in the scale group on the epoxy example? Shouldn't those be exact match only in the scale ad group?
No, scale is anything that's converted to sales. So it has to go in its original match type. So for example, if I'm over here, in a previous campaign, let's just say, because I did have to do this from these stats, anything coming out of the search term went in as exact match. We covered that, right? But then we come over here and we look at this previous campaign. He had some sales coming in down here as broad. He had clear epoxy resin as broad that needed to be moved, right? It had to be merged. It was a previous keyword and a previous match type. So some of these needed to be moved as broad match, right? So it kind of depends on where and then where I've found it at and then how I moved it. But definitely don't be scared to test different match types based on their historic performance. So let's go here again to show you what I mean by that in the campaign outline. If I add stuff here in shop to test, all you guys should be testing in shop and browse. That's step 1. If these are all coming in out of shop to see what I'm going to get as broad and phrase, I mean, I'm going to add them up to scale as broad and phrase, right? Because that's how they performed in their original groups, right? They wouldn't be going in there as exact match. Only a search term would go as exact. If I move these from shop into the higher bid group for scale later, because they perform well to get more velocity out of them, I'm definitely going to go ahead and use the original match type wherever I found it. So this is a combination of different match types because I had to merge, like I showed you guys in the beginning, I had to merge this other little campaign down here, and I had to merge a lot of his singles and some stuff out of scale that needed to kind of get into this main build, to the new structure that I created right here. So by mining those keywords out, I did have to take some different match types because I just took them exactly whatever match type was already converting in the lifetime data.
Okay, Dreamfish has a little bit of a scenario here.
Okay.
It says, let's say last month you mined a new keyword and added it to the scale ad group, and it performed poorly, so you moved it to the buy ad group. Then this month you mined that same keyword again. How do you remember that you already tried it in scale and it didn't work? Or do you just add it again into scale anyway?
You don't have to worry about it because it's not, luckily it is a computerized system. So the algorithm won't accept the keyword again. So if you've already put it into the campaign or the ad group, it doesn't take it again as a new keyword. So if you put the same keyword, same match type, it's already enabled or paused, it doesn't accept it. What happens is it doesn't tell you which ones it didn't accept, but you go to submit 42 new keywords, 42 new search terms. I mean, thank goodness. That's why, we do have a platform in Amazon. 42 new search terms. Amazon's going to say submitted 38. What that means is 4 of them were already in the campaign or ad group. In that ad group, sorry, not the campaign, in the ad group. So the system's not going to accept your duplicates.
Okay, Carolina has a question here. It says, I'm having a hard time fixing my conversion. When my ads were live in September, all I got was 20 to 40 sessions per day. Is that enough to know if we have a conversion issue or we need more traffic to determine that?
Okay, give it to me one more time, the numbers on that one.
It says, let's see here. When my ads were live in September, so last month, all I got was 20 to 40 sessions per day. So is that enough to know if we have a conversion issue or do we need more traffic to determine that?
Well, it shows you have a conversion issue if all the keywords are not performing correctly. You know what I mean? If all of them have a really high ACoS, it shows you either have a margin issue, a kind of profit margin issue that you don't have enough to advertise, a keyword cost issue, or a conversion issue. Looking at you would be able to, across all sessions, look at the average session conversion. You'd have enough data to do all sessions in the business center as a report. Look at all sessions combined and see what you were converting and know that a really good campaign needs to convert. Let me see here. I think it's going to be in the SDR. Okay. Your really good stuff needs to kind of, let's get some conversion rates going here. So it kind of depends. This has, again, this product has some decent margin, but you're going to need to look for your product. Based on the pricing of your product, I would say that you need to be converting somewhere in the, at least 15 plus range, maybe 20% conversion. So you'll need to kind of look, this product doesn't need that obviously because it's got more margin, but you need to kind of look at your numbers there and see what your overall conversion rate is. Or it's just indicative that the keywords, that you are targeting are not going to convert for that product in advertising at scale. But you did have a high enough ACoS that I wouldn't have invested more in advertising without figuring out either why the ACoS was so backwards or why it was costing me so much or why it wasn't converting. I would definitely be looking at those situations. Anytime I see a really high ACoS across multiple keywords, you have to stop because it's not working. Regardless of how much data you have, it should, from the get-go, it should have some keywords are profitable and some can be problematic, like what we're looking at in here. He's got some problematic keywords, but they're not like scraping the, he's at 32, 29. 27 is our target. These are not problematic, you know what I mean? But if I had these going in at 50, 70, 100, that's just crazy. You can't do it. You got to shut it down. So I do believe looking at yours that the ACoS was high enough that I'd be looking at conversion issues or margin issues. But you're right. It's not a ton of data to know. But you do know that those particular keywords, you have to go back in and drive enough orders. But you already know in the beginning of testing this that it doesn't look promising based on your ACoS and conversion rate, that those same keywords are going to tip over and start to really pick up traction. Like I've mentioned before, I can fix like a 31. I could fix this at 35. But if I go much beyond that, I'm not going to fix it down to 27. So if you're really outside the ACoS threshold, no amount of bid optimization or keyword optimization is going to take those numbers down to a manageable place.
Okay.
But good call. That's not a lot of sessions.
Awesome. Dreamfish has the next question here. It says, when you add a keyword to the scale ad group, do you manually search through all the other ad groups to try to find it and pause it? So the example, let's say you're adding epoxy clear resin exact match to the scale ad group. Do you hunt through all of your browse and shop ad groups to pause it? Doesn't this take a ton of time if you have to do this for each new keyword you're adding?
Well, okay, so first of all, you wouldn't be adding it back into scale. So like, you know, your scale group's going to filter itself. And you should know where that came from. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, if you're here in your kind of your STR manual, right, you're doing this work. So like, if you're saying you're going to take something, I'd have to go after a campaign outline to kind of explain that maybe. If I'm over here and I know I'm moving something, I have a really clean campaign outline. I always have a campaign outline in Sheets. I always do. I'm not in the campaign manager. I do everything in Sheets. There's nothing in my campaigns that's ever not been documented in a sheet, right? I taught you guys that on class 1 for campaign optimization and campaign structure. Class 5, first part, act 2, everything is done in Sheets. Nothing is done in the campaign manager. So you have a sheet of everything, right? And it's all here. Like you get what's going on. Now, if you're coming down here and then you say, oh, okay, this really converted wherever you found it at in the STR. First of all, the majority of these are coming off of singles, so I don't have any issue with that. But if it came off a shop group, it would be highlighted over here. And yes, I would go and I would pause it. But it would show me in the search term report what keyword it came off of and what ad group. And then I would just highlight it and know it was going to be paused, you know, because I was taking it this way. But I mean, you'd have to kind of, it's super not that complex. You don't do it in the campaign manager though. You do it in your sheets. You either do it in your STR or you can do it at the campaign outline view where you're looking at your previous build and you can decide what you're going to pause there. But really you should get it all right out of the STR. It should be super clean data and you could just move through it. You're going to see where that keyword was generated, that search term, where that keyword is really working at. It's going to come up here in your top sort. It's going to say it's from shop. You're going to highlight the ad group and the keyword and the match type. Boom. Put it in red if you're pausing it. This isn't a shop one, but if it was, put it in red and then you go ahead and pause it.
Okay. Is it possible to accidentally compete with yourself and drive the CPC up if you have the same keyword with different match types in 2 different ad groups?
No. Amazon is really good about that. It's in their terms and conditions. You can read it. There's no keywords don't compete against each other. But the problem with not having a good, clean campaign structure is that Amazon algorithm will pick the keyword in the placement that it wants, and it may not be your best one. So you don't want duplicates. You want to be sure you're always downloading. And we do like a quarterly download and the bulk download to make sure we don't have any duplicates. And we have a bulk download on the way too. But really, when it comes to that stuff, you want to keep everything as clean and tidy and focused as you can, because when you have duplicates, you won't compete against yourself. But you know, you will be kind of, it can be really problematic if you have duplicates in a campaign with a lower bid or an ad group with a lower bid, right? An ad group with a lower bid, and then you have it as a higher bid, somewhere where it needs more traffic, and they compete, and that could be messy because you don't want the algorithm picking the keyword wherever it's at. You really want to make sure that your keywords are in the right groups, structured for scale, structured for cost, and that you're not allowing the algorithm to kind of pick and choose across duplicates, but it won't compete.
Right. Would you please walk through building the negatives list in the auto from the STR report?
Yeah.
Awesome. Success would like that if you have a second to do
I don't
that.
use, okay, first of all, let's go through that. There's not enough data here to pull a negative. I mean, there's no data here. This is useless. This auto campaign, there's like 0 orders. There's nothing in here that I'm going to pay attention to. Nothing. It's just auto. It's just not interesting to me. And so from here, the way I built my negatives is the way I teach it in class, which is I went and I did a epoxy single keyword pull from Helium 10. I put the keywords in here sorted by broad match. And then I looked at every single one and I built the negatives just instinctively based on what this product was, what this product wasn't, and what competitors were not comparable to me, but getting a ton of traffic. So when I did this, I went through this list. I said epoxy, Helium 10, downloaded the list. And then from here, I said, okay, it's not a glaze. It's not a pigment. It's not a powder. It's not a mold. It's not for glass repair. It's not for art. It's not for casting. My big wins are tabletop, clear, bar, countertop. It is clear. It could be a kit. It's not putty. It's not glue. It's not a mold. No color. Not repair. It's not for like patching, like wood repair. Definitely not color again. Right? So then this, it's not for casting, it's not for pigment. So then those keywords went over into this list. And I even went a little bit deeper on this one. You know what I mean? And I would still be taking out some of these like pigment and color ones if they didn't get added on the first round. So I would go through that as keywords and I would add them as singles, single negative phrase. And then the next thing I did is I go back over to my competitive research, which is why it was the first thing we did in all of our sessions in the research section. We didn't start with keywords. We started with competitors because we have to look at the category. Amazon is a category game. It is not just a keyword game. It is a category game. So because of all the visibility on the product pages, category is really key to understand. So to get the category right, I'm like, okay, who's ranking on tabletop epoxy? Who's ranking on crystal clear epoxy? And where is my BSR for this particular product? As I move this through, I get a ton of negatives. I moved them over here to that same sheet right here, and I started to pull them. It's not chip. Once again, it's not a repair kit. It's not for the bathtub. It's not ceramic. It's not an adhesive. It's a top coat. It's a finishing product. It is, once again, it's just all these different places. It's not for stone. It's, these different things. It's not for putty. It's definitely, the Gorilla stuff is very different. If you go look at it from a competitive standpoint, Gorilla's price point is $4.97. My price point is $74. I have a gallon of finish. If I go look at Gorilla products, I would, but I'm not going to bother because I already know what Gorilla Glue is. It's a little tiny syringe and it's 8 ounces of stuff. And it's $5. It's not my shopper. My shopper's not buying Gorilla Glue and then adding a gallon of my countertop or bar finish into his cart. So I don't want to be on their pages. So again, I looked in the BSR for what pages are getting a lot of impressions. These are the best selling products. They're going to be getting a ton of impressions. Amazon loves to spend your money. It's just the job of the algorithm. They don't do it in a negative way. They want to sell a bunch of stuff. It's a really good search engine. So what you're going to see there is they're going to spend your money and they're going to say, oh, it's an epoxy. Oh, Gorilla Glue has got the most impressions of all the epoxies in our entire catalog. Let's put this product on Gorilla. And it's not going to convert for you. It's not good for your visibility. It's not going to help your sales history. It's a dead end. So Gorilla is a negative as well.
Okay. Dreamfish had a comment here. He actually tried what you guys were just talking about with the keyword going back into the same ad group. So they said, if you add a keyword into an ad group where it's previously been paused, Amazon will actually re-enable that keyword. So that's why they were asking how you could remember that it didn't work before.
Yeah, see, we've never had that issue. Like, we've been doing this as long as we've been doing it, and we don't have any issue with, but we always are also like going through the history. If that keyword, when you add your search terms, you're also looking at your keywords and you're pausing them every like 2 times a week, right? So if you have a keyword with a high ACoS or a previous performance, it would be paused. You would be catching that in the same sweep on your optimization, if that makes sense. So maybe that's how it's happening, but we don't have any issue with like runaway keywords and duplicating the search terms going in.
Okay. And then do you add everything that's mined from the STR into scale, or how do you decide which ones go into different ad groups?
Well, it goes into different ad groups if you have your brand. And then if it's like, this is different though. This is all category type keywords. When I'm looking at this is all like category type keywords, right? Like none of these are related to a competitor because this campaign isn't scaling at brand or competition yet. It's a fairly new product, right? This campaign's fairly new, which is jamming. I mean, the sales on this are awesome. I was like, look at that guy go. 70,000 in sales. So if I'm looking at this, when I come through, these singles are just jamming for him. And so he doesn't, the singles are what are really jamming. Those are category keywords, right? They just define the products within the category. So when I look at that, I think that you're going to say, okay, these all just go into scale. But if I'm pulling these same keywords and they're starting to come after this campaign is scaled, like my clients, like 6 months, 9 months, 2 years, you'll start to see a lot more brand and a lot more competitor keywords, a lot. And then at that point, you do need to put your brand back in your brand and your competitors back in your competitors groups. You don't want to put them in scale. But in this case, all of these are just category keywords, just define the product itself, basic keyword search terms, top of search, they're all going back into scale.
Okay, Fanoy's got a question here. Let's see here. Do you ever look at the last 5 days? And if you do, how can you use that data? When looking at the last 5 days on the campaign manager, you see a report that shows keywords with a lot of clicks and no sales in there yet. Would you pause that keyword? I'm afraid to let them run and end up with a very high ACoS.
Yeah, I don't do anything on 5 days worth of data. Outside of just, I need to have either, well, it depends. Are you talking about just pausing keywords? Well, I try to run a longer sort, but I am doing it every week, but I wouldn't just pull the date range for 1 week, if that makes sense. So pull a longer date range so you have enough clicks to make a good decision.
All right. How do you check for duplicates from month to month, like last month versus this month?
Well, like I said, I don't. And I don't have any trouble with, my stuff scaling. So I don't know. I mean, that's a detail that if you want to do some kind of, but one thing, we do so many steps in terms of pausing keywords within the campaign manager. Like I've explained to you guys, we do the STRs. You can always pull stuff straight out of the campaign manager. You can always do a bulk download for keywords and check that stuff. I definitely suggest once a quarter that you check things to make sure. But if you're in your campaign manager and you are pausing keywords and sorting them every single week, a couple times a week, you're not going to have anything run away crazy.
Okay, Dreamfish has a comment here for what we were just answering. It says, right, that's what I'm asking though. Let's say I add a keyword to scale on October 1st, and then I noticed on October 7th, it doesn't work. So I pause it in scale and move it to buy.
Well, hopefully you wouldn't be making it. Okay, so you wouldn't move it to buy without a monthly report, which is a different step we're covering next week, right? This is all about finding new keywords and getting the new good keywords into your account. The likelihood that one of these, again, I don't know. I don't move things to buy after 7 days. I've already told you I do it once every 30 days and I don't do that. And I pause keywords that aren't performing. And I think if you add the keywords back in and then somehow something gets re-enabled, so you're going to say that you got a new search term that converted to a bunch of sales at a great ACoS, and now you add it back in, and sometime in the history of your campaign, it hadn't converted to that ACoS. I mean, it's going to get paused that week within the 2x pausing session. It's going to get paused because it's going to have a bad ACoS.
Okay, so then the second part of that question, because I couldn't see it here on the screen, but so the second part of that was, on the 7th, it doesn't work. You say you don't do that, of course, but let's say they do pause it and move it to buy. Then
yeah, I wouldn't know how to answer that. I wouldn't do that. So it's a mute. It's not how I don't know what I would do. I would never take 7 days. That's so micromanaging. I don't know. I'm used to looking at huge numbers like this. I don't know. That's so micromanaging. I don't do that.
Yeah, I think the example he's trying to make though is, so then on November 1st, he pulls another report. And it pulls the same keyword and then he adds it to scale again because he didn't remember that 23 days ago it didn't work. Amazon re-enables it and it's probably not going to work again. So how do you avoid this scenario, or is this just not an issue?
It's not an issue. You just pause it. It'll get paused. If you in your weekly pausing sessions, it's going to get shut down. Anything with a bad ACoS is going to get paused.
Okay, and then the comment just being made now is, you said you monitor 3 times a week there, and there's a little contradiction here for how that's all going and what steps to do when.
Yeah, we put a guide together because we've had questions on that. But really all you do in the campaign manager is you go through your keywords. You really pay attention to the scale group. You look for stuff that has had clicks and no sales. You look for stuff that has crazy ACoS and you pause it.
Mm-hmm. And that's all stuff that has, a significant amount of data, not just a few days, correct?
Yeah, it's like you're really looking at a 30-day sort and you're doing it 5 days previous. So you're never looking at the 5-day window because Amazon's reports have a 7-day attribution window, which means for 7 days after the shopper clicks on your ad, they can buy it and it gets credited. So for 7 days attribution, you need to be sure that you go 5 days back. So again, if I'm looking at my weekly STR, if I'm doing my weekly optimization, we just do a simple 30-day sort. And again, this works in the millions of dollars that I manage, but you do a 30-day sort and you go I would look at October 5th and then I would go back through September 5th, right? I wouldn't be going past October 5th There's no attribution there. It's certainly not accurate attribution. So I'm looking at the previous 30 days. And the reason I go 30 days back is because I need to see how many clicks, how many impressions. I need to see some data. And if I'm seeing, clicks and a really high CPC that is above my max CPC, I can plug it. If it's something that's not even relevant to the product or really working, I can plug it. If it has a really high ACoS, I'll plug it. It's just really clicks and no sales and like an ACoS that's crazy high are the only things that you really need to watch in that. And then if you do it at 30 days, then you're at least getting as much recent data as possible. Because you're not doing anything with high orders, high volume in that sort. You're really paying attention to stuff that has 0 sales or really crazy ACoS. Your really top performing keywords aren't going to get into that sort.
All right. Hatsfield has the next question here. It says, as a general rule of thumb, do I take my 1 and 2 word keywords that show potential and test them as broad and phrase match, and then take my longer keywords and test them as exact and broad match types?
One more. Where is that data coming from? Can you give it to me again, Melissa?
Yeah, it just says, as a general rule of thumb, do I take my 1 and 2 word keywords, so 1 word or 2 word keywords that show potential and test them as broad and phrase match, and then take my longer keywords and test them as exact and broad match?
When you say show potential, does that mean you got them out of a search term report? I don't know what they mean, but he means by showing potential.
I'm assuming that's what it means. It's not listed here, but Hatsfield, if you're there and you can just shed some light on that real quick, that would be awesome.
And then another thing that I think is really important, because everyone's products are different, and every account is different. I would say something like Dreamfish. I know you like to do things in this kind of crazy way. I would say that you should go ahead and find your own tracking method to track your keywords month over month. I would never personally do that. I don't concern myself with that because of the results I get in advertising. But I mean, you may feel like with your products, especially because sometimes keywords are very tight on certain products. They're not as loose and easy to manage, right? I have products across the gamut. Some might have really tight keywords and some have really loose keywords. But you may want to just find that month over month report, double them up and sort the data. Find your own system. If you feel like you don't want to re-enable a keyword that could be, not going to perform for you, then you'll just add that extra step of taking your month over month data and sorting it that way. I would never teach that to the class because I think that's excessive. I think it's going to put people in a position where they're thinking about these details that aren't going to make them a ton of money or cost them a ton of money. So I'm trying to keep them focused on the end game, which is, what we're looking at here. Someone using the strategy and selling $70,000 worth of product at $16,000 in spend. This is what it should look like, even done somewhat messy, as we saw, very well played, but some professional audits that we could do here. This still is made $70,000 in sales against $16,000. Now, this could be his keywords, it could be his product, it's all these things. But I just personally wouldn't go to those extra steps because I think it gets to that simplicity factor is eliminated. And in business, we have so much to do in a day that if you get into each tiny granular detail, you won't be able to take over the world. And my goal is always to take over the market. So I think if you're trying to go and kind of run into the market, those small details, but your product could have keywords where you feel like those details are important. And I would definitely think you should listen to that. And I would go ahead and get your STRs. We save all these historically. And I would go start to do some kind of overlap data where you put 2 STRs together and you double sort them.
And they're saying out of the STR. Hatsfield asked that question. Those are coming out of the STR.
Okay, so the keywords are coming out of the STR, and then go ahead and read what he's going to do with them now.
Yep. So as a general rule of thumb, the keywords that he gets out of the STR, does he take the 1 and 2 word keywords that show potential and test them as broad and phrase match type, and then take the longer keywords and test them as exact and broad match type?
Okay, first of all, you got to get super clear on this. Like the keyword is what we've bid on. And then the search term is what people typed in response to the keyword we bid on. So the main thing in your mind as you structure this is you want to think, here's my keyword, here's my search term. Here's my keyword, here's my search term. So, if I'm looking at that, keyword and search term, right? I go back and forth. I'm going to say which keywords have the most potential because those are the keyword. Like here, let's do this cool sort. Watch this. This will really show you what I mean. Okay. And this is a key differentiator here. Okay. Which keyword, right? Which keyword has potential? You tell me now with that sort. Epoxy resin, right? You can't miss it. Epoxy resin generated all these variations. Woohoo, broad match, single ad group. Okay, so this jammed, right? All these variations, all these sales, broad and phrase. Epoxy resin is clearly the keyword that is doing the most work. And even if it wasn't already singled out, it would still be doing this work wherever it lives. So if this were shop, if this were another group, it would still be working no matter where it was at in the campaign. Where it was at, this little keyword, epoxy resin, would be jamming with the right bid, and it would produce all these different variations. So if you're saying what keyword would go to broad and phrase, if this wasn't already done, it would be this one, epoxy resin, and then possibly epoxy as mostly phrase. So you can see that. Now, if you're going to your exact match keywords, these are not about, you can't, first of all, no keywords are the same. So you can't just say, should it be broad? You have to look at the keyword and decide if it should be broad or phrase or exact based on the keyword itself and how people would search for it, right? You have to do that thinking behind it. But in this particular instance, I know these are the singles that are driving all these sales, and they're driving all these variations. So those are going to be the ones that would go into singles. And then from here, these are all exact match search terms. This is exactly what the shopper typed into Amazon.com before it made the purchase. So before it went and added 47 people, before they added this product to the cart, had just started their search with resin. And then the next group, epoxy resin crystal clear, 42, and then another 39, and then 33 put epoxy in. So from here, these are exact match keywords that came in as exact. And then they're going to go as exact match into scale.
Okay, Robert's got the next question here. And Robert's saying, I'm bidding on competitors in short-term browse keywords that give me a lot of impressions but very few clicks. Since there are so many impressions, the campaign's overall CTR is dropping significantly. Can the bad campaign level CTR hurt my scale, single word, and browse ad groups?
Well, I don't think it doesn't in mine, because I do have a different, in terms of as long as it's converting to sales. So if your competitors targeting is giving you those impressions, you do want those. If it's not converting to sales, you're going to have to think about treating your competitors differently. But as long as it's converting to sales, then it's still going to be okay.
Okay, let's see here. Hotsfield says, I have broken rule number 1 big time this last 6 weeks and lost a lot of money. I'm now scaled back and have restructured my campaigns and ad groups, listing brand browse, where I put my general keywords, and they're now at much smaller bids, and then shop and scale. So the ad groups he has are brand, browse, shop, and scale. Okay. I've noticed since doing this that my sales have come to a halt. Do you have any advice?
There's so many variables that could make that happen. He's saying that, I don't know. I mean, it has so much to do like this campaign structure. It has to do with like how he's bidding, how the keywords are structured, what the match types look like. Bidding is the most thing. If sales have come to a halt, it's a bidding issue, right? I mean, the majority of the time you're not bidding high enough to get the traction. Hopefully you've done this kind of sorting. Very hard to troubleshoot without seeing it, but this is the kind of sorting you want to make sure that you've done across the board, just to make sure. Looking at all your stuff, like I showed you guys at the beginning of class, how to pull it out of the campaign manager. Like these ones here aren't doing anything, so I'm able to pause them. I mean, so from here, I think you want to be looking at just like the overall picture of what keywords, like I moved them here in my STR mining, right? Like, okay, these are the ones from the old groups that we're converting to sales. So I have to make sure I copy those into the new group. I mean, hopefully whatever you've done to restructure, you've taken the keywords in the match type that they were in previously and set a bid that was comparable to where they were before. So if they are the same keywords, same match type, same bid, then they're going to perform similarly. If they are any of those factors are not there, the match type is different, the keyword itself is different or overlooked, or the bid is significantly different, that keyword will not perform the same.
Right, let's see here.
The best example I can give is this account, how he had all his single exact in scale, but the bid was $2. When we know from looking at this that we need a minimum of 762 to get these results out of these keywords.
Okay, when you come up with negatives from evaluating your manual campaigns, do you also copy those into your auto campaign negatives too?
You can do that, yes.
Okay.
I usually keep a running negative list, a master negative list for each of the products that I advertise.
Okay. And Hatsfield has another question here. It says, I have a 3-word keyword that I am testing in exact and broad match type. So similar to the question he was asking earlier. And then I'm bidding much higher in the exact match type than I am in the broad match type. Does this make sense to you? I have a 2-word keyword that I'm testing in all 3 match types, but I'm bidding higher in the broad and phrase match types. Should I be bidding the same on all of these match types, or should the bidding be varied by match types?
Well, if these are new keywords, the bid is going to be a starting bid anyway, and then you're going to have to adjust your bids to rank. So as you start to rank the product, you're going to be changing the bid. So a starting bid is not really a sedentary bid, right? It's a bid that you start with. When you have data like this, that epoxy resin will convert at a certain bid and then you put it into scale, it's most likely going to keep jamming like that. But when you're testing new keywords and you don't have data on them, your starting bid can be tiered however you see fit. I personally tier a little bit higher on broad, a little bit lower on phrase, and exact is even worth a little bit more. So if I had to do like a rock, paper, scissors, it would be exact and then broad and then phrase. Now, from there, you can do that, but most of the time I have my exact match not in its own group, it's in scale, which has just got my high level bid. So if you're doing broad and phrase, you can tier them slightly, but more importantly, you got to get out there and start increasing bids to rank. If you haven't done that yet for those keywords. So I don't know that they would say stay static, but if you wanted them static and you were going to tier them all within the same group in some keyword bidding fashion, I would just go rule of thumb, exact highest, broad next, phrase. But with Amazon, I find that you never know which match type is going to deliver the crazy results. Like we go back over here to the STR and it was resin phrase. You know, how do I know without testing broad and phrase, right? So I got a little bit out of broad, but I got way more out of phrase. So you never really know on Amazon till you test the different match types, just, you know, so you can tier them if you'd like to.
Right. Amazon Campaign Manager lets you add negative keywords at the campaign level for both broad and phrase. Am I right to assume that at the campaign level, you're adding negative keywords at both phrase and broad, and adding to the negative, adding to negative to the phrase and broad can be done individually? Is this correct? So it can be done individually, ad group wise, and campaign level. Is that right?
You can add, yeah, I do mine at the campaign level because I do one product per campaign, and normally my negative list applies across, because I do a very broad, because the one thing that is conclusive in algorithms is if you give it too many negatives, it is going to overfilter your traffic and impressions. So because 80% of the game on Amazon is product placement, as you start to really scale, you're going to hit implied demand in keyword search. Make no mistake about it. You're going to capture all the sales possible in keyword search. And it's like high school economics. It's supply and demand. It will be absolutely capitalized at some time in your game in a very short time if you're playing it aggressively. Keyword demand is then monetized and capitalized. You can't make people search more on the keywords. The only way to push it to the next level is to get on the product pages, like we've discussed in our strategies. So you have to get on product pages. It's 80% of views are on product pages. People are spending 80% of their time shopping, 20% in search. All the sales will happen at the end of the day when they come back to search and keyword search, but you still need the visibility through the whole funnel as you scale. So you will hit implied demand in search. That is just a given for all campaigns, all clients, history of time. And that's why you need to move into kind of placement targeted stuff. So when you're saying that, you will filter overall category type impressions by being too aggressive on your negatives. It's just an algorithm thing. You're making the algorithm sort it out in a way that it's too easy to confuse it. So I do everything as a single word negative phrase. So I'm just going to say, don't show me on stuff related to glass. Don't show me on molds. Don't show me on art. Don't show me on casting. Don't show me on glue. Don't show me on fiberglass. Now, because this campaign has performed so well with the limited negatives that Daryl added in the beginning, and I'm seeing tons of scale, I'm at my target ACOS on all my singles. Again, I'm not going to mess with the beast, right? It is still an algorithm. It is run by engineers. I'm not inside the brain of the algorithm. I'm not going to tinker with this. It's working. I'm happy that it's working. I'm going to focus on selling more products, finding more keywords, mining more stuff. So this is working fantastically. I'm going to keep it that way. But what wasn't working was his auto campaign. So without question, all of those negatives are just going to go into the auto as negative phrase, single word.
All right. So Lure VIP
They're going to go in at the campaign level because this whole campaign is only selling this one product. So my negatives, they apply to the whole product.
Okay. Lure VIP has the next question here. It says, my auto campaign was doing 40% ACOS, and then I added a list of negative phrase as shown in the class, and since then it's gone up to 68%. So 40% to 68% ACOS. I also decreased my bid slightly when I added the negatives. What should I do? There's
nothing to do. Your auto is just not working for you. Because you can only be placed where you're going to be placed. You know what I mean? Like if you tried it without negatives, you tried and filtered in more negatives, you've lowered the bids, auto is not a given. It is an auto placement, which means Amazon is going to use remnant traffic to show the ads where it can. If the auto doesn't work, it doesn't work. It doesn't work for every product, that's for sure. So it's something you have very little control over, and the only control you have is really negatives and bids.
All right, let's see here. Started out with a newer version of a product. I took my old keywords from my previous campaign, sorted them into a scale single, and getting my main seed keywords in scale at 85% ACOS. And when the older version was about 27% ACOS. So took all the keywords from his old campaign and old ad group and put them into the new one. Was previously 27% and now he's at 85%. Previously the conversion rate was about 25%. Should I just give it time or should I lower my bids right away?
Yeah, you got to do this. Going back to this, when you move stuff, first of all, did you stay in the campaign with the history, right? Did you stay in the campaign that had all the sales history that made you pull those keywords? Second, did you pull the keywords that only had 3+ orders, right? So you made sure that there was history. You're in the campaign with the most historic data. You're going to rebuild ad groups, not campaigns, rebuild the ad groups within the campaign. You cannot just set up a new campaign if you have a campaign with better sales history. So the campaign that those keywords came out of had a history. Use that same campaign. Put new ad groups in that campaign. That's one that I've seen that can mess things up. Two, which 3+ orders, all the keywords in the previous campaign had 3+ conclusive orders lifetime. 3, what is the match type? The match type that you move the keyword from. Because again, it's a keyword, right? It's not a search term. You're pulling it out of the campaign manager, which means it's a keyword. You have no indication of the search terms there. So keyword only, what keyword match type was it? Move it in the same match type. Next and last is what was the bid? This is huge. You can't go trying to bid for rank if the previous ones were bid very low. If your previous keywords in the previous place were bid low, you got to match that bid if you want to keep that ACOS. It's obvious that the scale bid didn't work for those particular keywords. Totally possible. So the things that have to stay the same for a keyword to perform the same is it's in the same campaign with the same history as it was performing at. It's got 3+ orders, so you know this is a conclusive thing. It's absolutely without question the same keyword and same match type, identically mined. And then 4, that you're going to make sure that the bid is similar, same bid as before, maybe a few cents higher, but no more. And then from there, did you pause the original keyword where it lived at? Did you pause it before you re-enabled it somewhere else?
All see here. Move on to the next one. Let's see. I've developed quite a list of negative keywords. I populated them as negative phrase in my campaign as a whole, but not in my individual ad groups.
Mhm.
I believe in earlier sessions, this was how you directed us to handle negative keywords. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's how I handle mine. I do. I don't want to overfilter my traffic. I'm really content to have a master single phrase negative list for my product. Now, you guys always be sure that you never want to take just one point of reference. If you have things you want to test, I mean, testing, negatives at the ad group level, testing different match types, these are all things that you should do. I'm just giving you the kind of tips and tricks that I've used to scale the way I've scaled. And so, but please don't just take it to the bank. I really think it's important that there's always opposing views. And I think it's important that everybody kind of do the things that they see fit. I'm just simply here to share with you my strategy. But that doesn't mean that if you want to test at the ad group level negatives, you should. If you want to test negative exact, you should. Please do, because it's all with algorithms. They're constantly changing. Products are all different. Markets are different. This stuff is always moving, right? It's not like an engine or a machine or an oven. It's an organic market. You've got real people coming, real competitors coming. It's always kind of moving around. You got a lot of engineers making changes day in and day out. So again, there's no harm in like trying different strategies. And all I say from this class that you should walk away with is the simple fact that you should use pragmatic, real-time data to make your decisions. That's the only thing that's always true in pay-per-click. It's always true that you want to get into the mind of the shopper. It's never going to change. It's always true that 80% of your keywords are going to be duds. And it's always true that 20% of your keywords will drive 80% of your sales as you hit scale. Some things are always true, but there's other parts that are always in movement and fluctuation, So the main thing you want to take away from this is getting this data, is figuring out how to get the data, how to look at the data, how to make decisions, and then using your particular campaigns and your own data to kind of like forge your own path.
Right. Here. Okay, Senjen's question is, can you just put a keyword as a negative instead of pausing it?
Okay, for example, perfect, great question. So like if I were down here on line 19, if I wanted to, I could put the word art, which I have done, as a negative. As a search term negative, right? But there'd be no reason for me to ever put a negative on the word epoxy or the word resin. I wouldn't need to come over here and put a negative on art, resin, epoxy, clear. Just the word art is all that screwed it up, right? I'm fine on clear resin, epoxy. It jams. Clear resin, epoxy resin, clear resin. I'm only screwed up when it gets into art. It's only one word. Just don't show me on art stuff.
Okay, Hatfield has a question here. It says, I have 5 keywords in my scale group. I am running each one as broad, exact, and phrase match types and slowly bringing up my bids to see how they perform so I can determine which ones will perform best and be pulled out as single keywords with uncapped bids. Am I on the right track?
Yeah, read it one more time, Melissa, top to bottom.
Because I have 5 keywords in my scale group. I am running each one as broad, exact, and phrase match types and slowly bringing up my bids to see how they perform so I can determine which ones will perform the best and be pulled out as single keywords with uncapped bids.
Okay, the only thing that goes in scale is a keyword that has 3+ orders. So if it's had 3+ orders in your STR, it goes in scale. From there, the goal of scale, the reason it's called scale, is all about the bidding strategy. It's just about keeping an uncapped bid, right? So I'm uncapping the bid in scale because I have conclusive data that these keywords have performed to sell. These keywords have sold 3+ orders. I know that they're proven from the STR. They get moved into scale and the bid is uncapped. And when I say uncapped, I've bid it to rank. Right, I've set like the higher level bid on the bid range. And I've set it at the ad group level, which means all keywords in that group are all set at the same bid. And then from there, if you want to take a search term like this and test it as exact and broad and phrase, feel free. I'm normally just going to put it in as exact, and I might put it in as broad. Probably not as phrase, unless it is an actual phrase like epoxy resin. So, I mean, I think if you're doing that, that's going to work. Just make sure that you're bidding to rank, and make sure that you're not trying to keyword bid. You know what I mean? Because you don't know. And the only time you can use keyword level bidding is when you move stuff to buy and you just absolutely know where that keyword needs to be capped for profitability. There's no reason to put limits on your keywords since the CPC is going to be far lower than the bid. The goal is to get as much traffic as you can and scale, not to start guessing, because you're keyword guessing. If you're bidding at the keyword level, you're just guessing, unless you have an STR like this and you're going to go set it based on the max CPC and buy.
Okay, and then Nancy's got a question here. When you add keywords to the back end, does that impact your organic listing in Amazon's view? I'm in the top 2 to 3 organic for all my main keywords, and I do not want to wait for Amazon to reallocate my listing just to add keywords to the back end based on a search term report. It's been 60 plus days since I changed my listing, and it's in great shape organically.
One more time from the top, Melissa. I might have missed the first details, but I was focused on the second part.
Oh, yeah. When you add keywords to the back end, does that impact your organic listing in Amazon's view? I think that's just the main question.
Okay. Well, I think that on the back end, you should plan on optimizing your keywords. There shouldn't be any, it's like the title and some of the product page stuff that's tricky to change, but you shouldn't have any trouble optimizing the back end. But I'm going to go ahead and do a short tutorial on this Thursday with back end, but I have to clarify a really important detail on the back end. You need to copy your exact back-end search terms the way they are today if you're ranked organically. Copy them exactly, right? Make sure you have every attribution, you have every keyword sequence, frequency, what lines you have them on. Take a screen cap, right? Take a screen cap of the back end as it sits today. And then if you add new keywords from your search term report, which we do, just make sure that you always have the original of what you changed it from. Right? So that if for some reason your organic rank doesn't go up in the right direction, which it should, then you need to be sure to go back to the original. Right. But never make changes to the back end without having a clean screenshot and text-based file of exactly what the back end looked like before you made the changes, especially if you're organically ranked.
Okay. Success is saying, I've bid for rank on single phrase keywords. The Amazon bid range high equals my current bid. Does this mean competitors are getting closer to my top bid and that I need to increase my bid again?
I don't know. It's hard to know what a competitor's bidding. Just start in the high range of the suggested bid, a little bit higher, see where you're ranked, and then continue to increase the bid to see if you can rank within your targeted costs. And then if you can't, go ahead and lower the bid.
Let's see here. Hold on a second. Quick reminder, guys, when you guys are submitting questions, if you do them on separate lines, I can't put them together. The platform doesn't let me do that. So if I don't know if you guys are hitting enter in between the questions, but then when we go to look at it, it doesn't all come together for me. So I'm going to put this one together, but we'll go on to a quick question here. You mentioned there wasn't anything in the auto STR that's useful to you, but I thought I saw something with 100 plus clicks in just one order. Why wouldn't you hunt for a negative there?
You mean this guy on epoxy resin? Yeah, I mean, there's nothing in here. There's nothing for me to pull from this. Most of these, the way that Amazon is showing the auto, the bid's too high for the conversion rate I got, and it's just epoxy resin. And I already know from a search view, epoxy resin works fine for me.
I'm going to put two parts of Vicky's question together here so I can read it all as one. All right, here we go. Okay, so should we use only one keyword research tool, or should we use more than one?
I like to use different tools. I think that the one thing that you were saying here is something about the keyword planner, which is a Google tool.
Yep.
The only way you can win with Google keywords is if Amazon ranks your product on Google or you're running ads on Google. So with Google keywords, they're very different than Amazon, and I would use an actual Amazon data tool. I would focus less on Google keyword planner. Again, because you have very little control over the placement on Google. It's Amazon's game if they're advertising you or not. So I think in terms of Amazon advertising, I would use a keyword tool that focus specifically on real data from Amazon advertising. But I have to say, across multiple keyword tools that get Amazon advertising data, which is all that really matters for as we see here, this is a tool, Helium 10, that pulls actual Amazon data for us. And we were able to kind of see which of these keywords, I think it was in clear epoxy, this is what Helium 10 said the volume was at. If you look at my search term report, this is exactly where the volume's at. So it matches up perfectly. Like Helium 10 gave me the perfect data to make the perfect decisions, or Daryl the perfect decisions. And now he's off to the races with 80,000 in sales or something. So I would say an Amazon tool specific is all you need. And I also would say a lot of the keyword tools, as much as I love them because I have subscriptions, because this is my profession, I have found recently that the majority of the keyword tools do provide a lot of the same data if they have Amazon real data. And if they don't, they're not worth doing.
Okay, Julie's saying some of the previously performing keywords that made it into the buy group are now getting very few impressions. Should she just let this run, or what is the purpose exactly?
Well, yeah, when you move it to buy, you're putting a bid, you know what I mean? You're putting a bid that works for your profitability metrics, right? You're coming over here and you're saying, this is my max CPC that I can pay. And that's based on your margins. That's based on your product conversion rates. It's really the game of business, right? How good are your margins? How is your buying competition? How good are you competitively at buying and selling at the lowest price or whatever price needs to be? How do you have a differentiation or a premium in your product that makes it worth more money to convert higher? These questions are all business based. So really it's going to be the max CPC and the conversion are going to impact the success of the campaign, how that product sells and how it costs in the market based on what all your competitors are doing and how well you can sell. So with those two metrics in mind, it's very common when you put a max CPC, a capped bid on that, you don't get that much more traffic. Sometimes you do, though, if it's a broader keyword. You don't get as much traffic because you're not bidding with the market. You're bidding based on your own margins and your own conversion potential. So yeah, it's fairly standard when a keyword gets moved that the sales will be reduced. But that's it. You got to bid where you can afford to bid.
Okay, Robert's got the question here, and there are metrics in this one, so get ready for some numbers.
Okay.
Okay, can you talk a bit about things you've seen in bidding? Do you find yourself making high bids such as $10 and getting $1.58 CPC, like in the example that we saw? Have you ever lost the top bid spot due to things like poor CTR or conversions, even though your bid is very high? And have you ever bid 3, 4, or 5 times the max bid just to get to the top bid position?
All those questions are yes. I mean, yes, I see campaigns all the time with a high bid like you're seeing here today, a crazy $10 bid and an average CPC that's $1.58, $1.04, $1.10, $1. The product is selling very well on these keywords. It's converting. It's a very competitive product. And as a result, these CPCs reflect his sales, but the product sales conversion, or at least converted the way this product is converting based to the competitors. He's got some kind of advantage. He's doing really nice. The average CPC is far lower than $10 bid. I do see that all the time. The next thing is, yes, if you have like poor performance, right, which you shouldn't, the way the campaigns are structured here, when you have singles as singles and you have scale as scale, you shouldn't have poor performance across these big ad groups that you need a lot of traffic, right? Your history should be reflective of that. So without question, if you can't click and you can't convert, you can't buy the traffic. So no matter what you bid, you can't just buy the traffic. You have to sell in that position or the algorithm won't show you. And that's how it is with Google. It's about clicking. With Amazon, it's about selling. So if you're not clicking and selling or getting a lot of sessions or getting a lot of really good interest on those keywords, Amazon doesn't consider you relevant and they want the products that will sell the most. They have a percentage invested in everything on the platform. The whole catalog, they're getting like 15%. They definitely want the stuff that sells. So if you put a product up that doesn't click and doesn't sell, without question, you can't bid it high enough. You'll never get any kind of ranked position because you can't click or sell better than your competitors. And you have to do it competitively, which means you have to click and sell better than the guy next to you to hold the spot. So it could be a combination of both. It could be one or the other, but in the end, it's always going to be sales. If you can partner it with strong clicks, you're even better to the races. So yes, low clicks, low conversion, can't buy the spot. And yes, doing that bid 3 to 5 times the max CPC, if the product's not clicking or converting, and it doesn't have a lot of sales history, sometimes you have to go that high to rank. But you should know right away after 10, 20, 30 clicks exactly what to do with that keyword.
All right, Ian's got a question here. It says, now that you know from the search term report that you can convert sales for the search term epoxy resin crystal clear,
Yes.
Are you pretty confident that you could run a successful headline search ad for that search term?
Yes, and I would use that in the copy, epoxy resin crystal clear. And it was actually my next step with this campaign. But this product, I'm so glad you asked that. And it was in my list to tell you guys, this product doesn't have multiple variations of this particular epoxy. So I have nothing to run in the search term report. I mean, I have nothing to run in a headline banner. So based on the search term report, yes, I would be running headline banners I would be testing epoxy resin without question. And I would be also doing epoxy resin crystal clear without question as headline banners. And then all my brand stuff would be a headline banner. Always brand is a headline banner. I'm going to do brand always as headline. So if any of you guys missed that on previous sessions, brand is always a headline banner, your brand headline banner. From there, if I were doing just category keywords, I'm going to go after epoxy resin crystal clear and epoxy resin as separate headline banners. And I'm going to go ahead and do them at the different match types that they're working. Now with that, I can't do that here because he's only got one epoxy resin. So you need 3 products to make it really work.
Upfield's asking, what's the highest you've ever bid on a keyword?
Well, I try to be really strategic. You know what I mean? I bid only as high as I need to bid to rank, and then I lock and hold. So one thing is certain about my strategy is that once I take that position, I will not move ever. Like before I ever take a client, before we ever get anything into action, I'm super clear with them that it's not like a short-term game. Like I won't go trying to put pennies in their piggy bank on ACOS. I won't go doing these things. I'm going to take the market and I'm going to take it like gangbusters. I'm going to do it fast and I'm going to hold forever. So that is my strategy, right? It's just fast and very, very strategic going in my sheets before I ever build. But once I take that spot, I'm never moving. I'm like glue. Like seriously, I am glued to that spot. Forever. I'm talking years, like I'm still there on Amazon. So for me, it's more about holding it. And I'm very strategic about the bid. And then I bid just slightly high, like I've taught you guys. I try to not up that bid. That's it. So sometimes, yeah, I mean, some of these keyword bids on Amazon get crazy, but then I'm still, able to manage a really good CPC out of it.
Okay, Smile's got a question, and this is kind of a topic that I don't think we've covered, and I've not heard of it, but Sheree, you maybe most certainly have. Smile says, I've heard some people said that if I were an Amazon Prime member paying $30 a month for next day ship, that Amazon gives me a higher priority when it comes to showing my product to the buyer. Is this true or false?
Geez, I don't even know.
I've never even heard of it.
That would be like an amazing selling machine question. That's like a Mike or Jason or Matt question or Rich, one of those guys. I don't know about that.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. That's all the questions we have. Yay.
You guys jammed today. This was a great session. This was awesome. Daryl, thank you for letting me use your campaign as an example. It was a really fun search term report to mine. There was tons and tons of opportunity in this one little search term report to get some pretty killer stuff done, as you guys can see. And it was awesome. And it was great to see the strategy in action. It was great to see the numbers in the campaign manager. It was really nice to see the 16 and go into the 70. Really awesome account to analyze. Thank you for sharing it, Daryl. I'll send you over the sheet so you can make the changes. And then we're going to go ahead and use this same search term report right here to do the back-end search terms on Thursday's class. So you guys have a really great week. I'll see you Thursday. Until next time.